Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Ben Frost album, Aurora. This guy is an Australian music producer, multi-instrumentalist, and soundtrack composer. Lately, he has been keeping busy putting together film scores, as well as a collaboration with Daniel Bjarnson. But it's been a while since we've last heard from Ben in a full-length studio album capacity. 2009's By the Throat, by my count, an album that not only dabbled in the very moody, dark, ambient soundscapes and drones that we typically expected from Ben, but also chamber music. There were some pretty intricate compositions on this record, as well as a little bit of abrasiveness, noisiness. By the Throat is a really diverse and skilled album. I recommend you listen to it. However, this latest project from Ben is not nearly as diverse. In fact, I think he very intentionally narrows his scope down to the more synthetic and harsh elements of Ben's compositional palette. On this LP, Ben is embracing heavy, industrially tinged rhythms shrouded in harsh walls of noise. Little baby high-pitched squelched melodies hidden away in apocalyptic fuzz. I love dark ambient music like this that is incredibly textured. The two latest Tim Hecker records actually come to mind, both of which might actually have been influenced by Ben Frost to a degree, given that the 2009 album By the Throat was so distorted and was so textured, and Tim Hecker actually named it as one of his favorite records of the year on Self-Titled Magazine's website. Still, admittedly though, I am feeling just a tad underwhelmed by this new Ben Frost record. For music that is ambient music, experimental music, noise music, there are very few moments on this LP where I feel mystified, where I feel like I'm being brought to another world. This music to me doesn't really have that strong of a sense of place. What I mean to say is this record, I kind of just see right through it for what it is. It's just pretty transparent, a little uninspiring, I think. The sounds on this LP, as they are presented to me, they don't really drive me to imagine or really feel anything. The sounds are just merely the sounds, and throughout the duration of this record, to me, they just kind of stay that way. That might have to do with the composition of these songs, but supremely, I think it has a lot to do with the flow of this album, which I think is terrible. There's nothing significant, in my opinion, about how the tracks on this LP complement one another. This thing to me really feels like just a mixed bag. The first half of the LP, for example, is loaded with these whisper, quiet, ambient tracks. I would actually even call the third track on this LP almost a field recording. Not only are these tracks not that gripping, it seems like they're both really too short to elicit any kind of sense of calm, but it seems like the only reason these songs are in the track list is just so that the next track immediately after them can bust in with an incredibly loud intro that's ear-piercing in comparison in volume. This happens from the song Flex to the song Nolan. This happens from the Teeth to Sea Can't. This happens within the very short track on this LP, Diphenyl Oxalate. And while I don't really mind jarring music, I found, at least in this case on this record, it just sort of lost its luster as I was listening to this album repeated times. Now, as far as the louder tracks on this LP go separately, I wouldn't even call them that interesting. The song Nolan, for example, is incredibly chaotic with all these drums, bells, synthesizer leads, a drone hanging in the background too, I think, and none of it really ever assembles into anything coherent. What ends up happening is the song just turns quiet and slowly progresses into a really loud, massive, brittle, and distorted finish. A finish that's not nearly as epic or overpowering as it is just shrill and kind of tedious. I feel the same way about the closing track on this LP too, and as far as the song Sea Can't goes, this song to me seems more focused. There are huge, massive drums on this track and rumbling sub-bass. The rhythm on this song and just the chilling reverb surrounding these drums reminds me of like an old, early Swans track. But again, as the song progresses, we get louder, we get more intense, and we end up having a track that once again is really shrill, is really ear-piercing, but the composition that the distortion is masking or over-modulating just isn't incredibly gripping. It kind of underwhelms me in the same way that when I listen to, let's say, a Sleigh Bells song. It's an okay pop rock song, but for whatever reason, it's just turned up to maximal distorted volume for a bit of a thrill. On the second half of this LP, there is my favorite song on the album, Venter, another slow burner that picks up some wintry drones and some bells along the way. The way this song is paced actually reminds me of like a moment or two from Swans the Seer. And while the ending of this song is noisy, I do find it to be more tolerable than some of the other tracks on here. But even the moments I like on this LP, I just find them to be wrapped up far too much in their own chaos. Like the explosions, the distortion, the destruction, the decay that you hear on this record, it's encased into the album and it really only affects itself, and I'm just an outside observer and it's just really not translating to me. I do commend this album for its experimentation. I do commend Ben for doing something different this time around. I commend this record for just embracing the tenets of noise, which is usually an element I find interesting, especially on music such as this, but I didn't find this record to be even half as cinematic or as engaging as Ben's last LP. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this album. Transition, if you've given this record a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Ben Frost, Aurora, forever.